Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Tuesday, September the 25th, 2018, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, your second daily dose of happy for the day. And we've been going through a little bit of a technical glitch for the past day or so. Our Spreaker platform that people who listen to the live broadcast would normally use to listen to is not working the way it's supposed to. And so we've got a ticket open with them, and hopefully they're going to get that fixed pronto, or relatively soon, I would hope. And in the meantime, we're just doing the recorded version, which is a traditional podcast. Hey, how about that for a concept? So we're doing a traditional podcast, and we're posting it. It'll be posted within an hour each day, like we normally do. So even though some of you who like to listen to the live broadcast, and we love you for doing that, won't be able to do it for the next day or two, it's coming back soon. And in the meantime, you just go to your feed and listen to the pre-recorded or the recorded version, because, hey, it's the same podcast. How about that?
How about that?
Isn't that something? So how you doing, Wendy? I mean, we haven't talked in a few days. I hope you had a good weekend.
I did. I had a great weekend. Actually, now that I'm only doing 2 shows a week, it feels like forever between Thursday and
I know.
Thursday.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, time does get distorted in strange ways.
It does. Yeah. I've been experiencing it now with the fact that I now have more co-hosts. So more often, every week I'm saying, gee, I haven't talked to you in a week. that wasn't the experience before, right?
Right.
So this is good. No, it means that we're getting more perspective, we're getting more viewpoints, getting more ideas. I mean, that's been the cool thing, I think, because like with Linda and Patty and now Louie joining, every one of them brings a brand new perspective above and beyond what you and Cindy and Tom and Joel and David, while he was here, were doing. I mean, it's like an expanding, talk about expansion. It's an expanding set of viewpoints, and I'm loving it. I think our listeners are too, because our numbers are really up. But it's been good. It's been good. I've been enjoying it, even though I haven't had a chance to talk to you 3 times a week like we used to be able to do.
Well, and I've been enjoying it too, because I've been listening to you with the new co-host, and I'm like, well, there's a new perspective. Oh, yeah. That's new. Well, we haven't had that on our show before.
Right, yeah.
So I'm liking it too. Yeah, so I'm definitely experiencing the expansion of the show, no doubt.
Yeah. In fact, Anne-Marie texted me over the weekend just before, leading up to doing our weekend podcast, and said, wow, you've had some really interesting discussions this week. I mean, really interesting, which pretty much sums it up. Because when you get those new perspectives, I mean, Linda in particular has been taking me kind of like Star Trek. We have gone where no man has gone before. I mean, I know that's not literally true, but it seems like it from my perspective. But no, it's been fun. It's been good. And I also would have to say that, previously we talked about how I have had the most coaching of any co-host in the country, because I've had all these co-hosts who are life coaches. Well, that's actually expanded now, because I have more life coaches, and with the new people who are on board, Anne-Marie and Louie, who are not life coaches, even they've been giving me stuff that just gives me a completely different way of thinking about things, sometimes in a very simplified manner that's really, really good. So yeah, I'm well coached these days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there are not only so many coaches, but I'm so aware of how many unique individuals feel a calling to helping others in ways of helping become more of who they are.
Yeah.
Tapping into their potential. And, everybody that I connect with, they do it differently. Mm-hmm. And, there once was a time in my business entrepreneurial career when I just started in this kind of work where I felt somewhat competitive. I felt like in one respect, there weren't many of us, but those of us that there were, I felt like we all competed against each other. And for me personally, the competition idea has really dwindled down to almost nothing. And I feel it's much more fun to play with others from a cooperative space. And as I became more aligned to that thinking, that there's not competition, there's plenty for everybody, abundance is the law of the land, that's when I started really reaching out and meeting other people who were doing something similar to me, yet different. And I recognized that there's a place for all of us. And, I love a comment that I heard Abraham say many years ago. A workshop participant said, why isn't there just like one teaching methodology? Like there's so many different people saying so many different things. And I loved Abraham's response, which is, well, if everybody in the world was at the same place emotionally, spiritually, educationally, etc., there'd be a need for only one teacher.
That's true.
But every single person is on their own personal journey, and everybody's in a different place and thinks different and has different filters and lenses for how to perceive the world. That requires multiple teachers.
Yes.
And I love that idea.
I do too.
I totally love that idea.
Yeah.
And I'm so aware, even with my own career as a coach, I feel like it's an ever-evolving process. I mean, I know that law of attraction coaching is like my main thing, the thing that I love to do. But I also have had tons of awareness lately that I love to do personal transformation work. And the two together work together. I mean, like I see huge synchronicity between law of attraction awareness and guidance with the personal transformation work that I do. To me, they go together. But somebody else who doesn't have the background in personal transformation may not see how that might be necessary because they have something else that fits with law of attraction. Or yesterday I was having lunch with, this was so funny, I met her at an Abraham Hicks workshop 4 years ago in San Antonio, Texas. She was actually one of the volunteer staff. And I had asked her a question and, like, hey, can you tell me where such and such is? And before you knew it, we were just having like girlfriend conversation, getting to know each other.
Nice.
We shared phone numbers and because we both lived in the Dallas area, we're like, hey, yeah, let's get back in contact with each other when we get home. Well, it took us a year before we did that. And then it was probably 2 years before we met in person. And then yesterday, 4 years later, was the first time we ever actually spent time together having lunch.
Nice. Oh, that's great, though.
Yeah, which was very fun. But, we were in this fun conversation, and we were talking about law of attraction, and she said, I'm kind of in the closet about that.
In the
and
closet?
I said, huh?
Okay.
Yeah, and she goes, I don't really tell many people about my belief in law of attraction. And I said, really? She said, yeah, it just wouldn't go over well with my family and their religious beliefs. And she said, it just doesn't feel comfortable for me to talk about it with many people.
I can understand that, actually, because I remember when I was first exploring the idea of doing the podcast, I mean, by the viewpoint that I used to have long before I became interested in law of attraction, by my own viewpoint, I would have been considering myself crazy. And so now I had to consider, did I really want to be put out there in a way that people who thought like I used to would say I was crazy? It took me a while to say, okay, I'm willing to do that.
Good for you. And she's not even there yet. And she's been studying law of attraction since, at least 10 plus years.
Wow. Yeah.
And I shared with her some of my story, and I said, well, I was always considered the weird one in my family. I don't think I was weird, but for whatever reason, my sisters decided to call me weird, and so that I just got labeled that way. And people used to think, oh, you're so good talking to people, you'd make a great network marketer. So needless to say, every time somebody I knew got involved in network marketing, they reached out to me and they'd get me excited. I did 7 different network marketing companies.
Okay.
Only to find out that I love to learn and I love to talk about things that excite me, which is what caused people to think I'd be good at it. But what I didn't like is getting people involved in the business aspect of selling the product.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So after the 7th one, I got all that I need to know. I'll never do that again. But one of my sisters said to me, like every time she'd see me, she'd say, so what's the latest and greatest? What are you excited about today? And because she saw me as somebody who hopped from one thing to the next, but that these network marketing companies didn't stick. And, I talk like this was a make it or break it, live or die kind of product, because when I believe in something, boy, I really believe in it.
I believe you.
And ironically, when I started really learning law of attraction, I barely spoke about it, especially to her, because I believed in this more than I believed in anything else I'd ever believed in. And I didn't want to get it tainted with the previous perception she had of me, which was kind of like, what's the business flavor of the day?
So you kind of went through the same thing, really.
Yeah, but for a different reason than my friend. She said she didn't want her family's disapproval.
Right.
I personally have had my family's disapproval most of my life because I'm weird, so that really didn't apply.
Well, that does simplify things,
Yeah. But first of all, because law of attraction is somewhat of a spiritual concept, I know she's highly religious, and I knew this would really conflict with her religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And frankly, I didn't want to debate it.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to believe it, utilize it in my life, share it with those who are ready and open and desired knowing it. And I have no need or desire to share it with somebody who's closed to the idea. And I can't 100% know she's closed to the idea, but let's just say in all the years that I've been following law of attraction principles, never have I had a conversation with her where I felt there was a natural opening to talk about it.
Yeah.
So that tells me, we're not a match on that conversation, and that's cool.
Yeah.
But then when I was talking with my friend yesterday, another topic came up, or another thing on the same topic, which I thought was interesting, which is when I've been seeing the same chiropractor for over 10 years, and his wife runs the office, and she's the person at the front desk. And one day, this was about a year ago, we were in conversation about something, and she said something like, so what are you up to? And you know what? It might have been when I was starting the podcast with you, and I was really excited, and I wanted to tell her about the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And so she said, well, what's the subject? And I said, law of attraction. And she goes, what's that? So what came out of my mouth was something like, well, it's the concept that when you think positively, you attract positive things into your life. And she went, oh, I totally believe in that. And then she went off and told me a personal story in her life of how she changed her thinking to positive and how she got a positive result, and how she has shared this idea with, I think, her nephew and helped him, make space for a girlfriend in his life. And she's like off and running, but it was interesting because she never called it law of attraction. She didn't know it by that name. She knew the understanding and the concept. And so, fast forward to probably about a month ago, I was in the office for my monthly, chiropractic visit, and there was no one else in the waiting room. I was her last client of the day. And she goes, if it's not too personal, can I ask you something? I said, sure. And I mean, she and I think of each other as family because we've known each other for so long. And she goes, so I know you told me that you had left your corporate job. So what are you doing now? And so I started telling her about my law of attraction coaching practice. And again, she goes, so what's law of attraction?
I think we played this record before.
I know, but because I know what she already believes, I kind of played back her words. She goes, oh, yeah, like I so believe in that. And then she, again, went off and running, telling me about something she posted on Facebook that was, in that vein, and some experience she had had. And anyway, the reason I share this is because when my girlfriend and I were talking about it yesterday, it kind of reawakened this awareness that I had that so many people think about so many things in so many different ways, but they don't all know it by the same label.
Yeah, that's true.
And I just think that's a fascinating point that, my chiropractic wife doesn't know it by the name law of attraction. She doesn't really have a label for it, but it's something she so heartedly believes in, and she lives her life by, working toward thinking positively so she can attract positive things.
I'm impressed, too, that she came up with that pretty much on her own. I mean, that's pretty good.
I don't know where she learned it. She's probably read about it somewhere.
Maybe.
Or heard about it somewhere. But like I remember, 10 plus years ago, my mother was really uncomfortable with me talking about law of attraction because she didn't think that it lined up with her Christian religious beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And, I talked about it on a regular basis, and she and I email each other a lot. And so it was in my emails quite often. And I could tell she wanted to believe in some of the things that were really making a positive difference in my life, but she would always look at what the source of the information was, and when it was connected to law of attraction, it made her uncomfortable. And I said to her, kind of laughingly, but also with a sense of truth, I said, Mom, give it 10 years, and I promise you, at least in 10 years from now, the Christian community will be using the terms law of attraction. I said, because it's real, it's true. And I said, but the Christian community doesn't seem to grab a hold of things, at least this is my experience, when things are on the cutting edge or not yet completely adopted by a big group of our society. But once it is, all of a sudden, they'll adopt it and they'll start to find the scriptural references so that they can talk about it in a way that the average Christian will accept it.
Very good.
And at the time, she was like, oh, that's kind of weird.
Oh, I see.
Then all of a sudden, now she lives and breathes by TBN, which is Trinity Broadcast Network, which is a Christian television station.
Okay.
And she watches it all the time. And I remember a few years ago when she sends me an email telling me how TBN is talking about law of attraction. Can you believe this? And I'm like, yeah, it's been about 10 years. I was expecting it. And then she starts telling me the scriptures that they're telling her that back up the concept of the law of attraction and how it's been there all along. And, I just kind of laugh because now she still doesn't love the term law of attraction. But if I quote the scriptures that back up law of attraction, we're all good. So just like my chiropractor's wife, she talks about it in her languaging, and my mother can talk about it through scriptural references. Those that are not religious based tend to talk about it as law of attraction.
Well, I can tell a story from not just this morning's podcast, but kind of ongoing with Cindy, because this morning, it's the same thing, but kind of in an inverse way. Because this morning, Cindy and I were talking about the book Awakened Imagination by Neville Goddard. And Goddard was a very devout Christian who turned his Christian beliefs and Christian study into an exploration of what we would call law of attraction today in a way that many Christians would consider to be heresy. And so that really kind of put him outside the Christian church of his time, because his time was the middle of the 20th century. Well, reading today, Cindy and I both kind of have the same experience. It's like there's a lot of scripture that he cites in order to make his points. And it makes both of us cringe a little bit. But then we get to the good parts, quote unquote, the good parts that are talking about law of attraction. It's like, oh, well, that's all really familiar to us. So we're kind of doing the reverse of what your mother does. She wants to latch on to the scriptures. We want to stay away from the scriptures, and we want to latch on to the non-scriptural stuff. But we're both dealing with a mixture, which is really kind of weird.
Well, and it goes to show you, of all the people we've just talked about, from my mother to my chiropractor's wife to Cindy to you to me, we all have our own filters and lenses and perception of the world of what is comfortable to us.
Exactly.
And how we can receive information.
That's true. Yeah. Very true.
And it's like two people could be talking about the exact same thing, but using very different words. Mm-hmm. And they think they're talking about something completely different. And they may even argue over the point, trying to get to a point of, no, you need to believe what I believe. No, you need to believe what I believe. And the fact is, they probably are believing the exact same thing.
Right.
One's calling it blue, one's calling it red,
Well, we haven't never done that one before.
Yeah, but they're trying to describe the concept of color.
Right, exactly, yes.
And it's just, it's fascinating how different we all are. And really, what a beautiful thing that we have that level of diversity, not just racially, but also in how we kind of approach everything we think about.
Yeah.
You know, we all have our own experiences that cause us to think in very, very different ways. And
whether it be philosophically or theologically or spiritually or metaphysically. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to approach all those fields, and people get very, very strong opinions about, their own particular approach. But nonetheless, very often we're all talking about the same thing.
Well, and after a podcast is over, Walt, sometimes I'll think to myself, Walt and I seem as though we are so on opposite ends of the spectrum
We do.
on whatever given topic. And then I think about it later and I went, no, we are so on the same page. We just come to it from two very different places.
Right.
And sometimes it takes a long time for us to define our terms and explain how we use these words. And then we're like, oh, you're saying what I'm saying, just using different words.
Different words,
got
yeah.
it. It's like, isn't there a song that says something like the words get in the way?
Yeah, there is. What song is that? You're right.
I don't know, but I just heard that phrase, the words get in the way. I'm like, that's a song.
It is, yeah. I can even hear the melody, but I can't quite piece it together. I'll get it. When I get it, I'll tell you what it is.
That's something where I have to say my inner being for the longest time has used song lyrics to guide me. And like I believe right now that was just my inner being kind of throwing in that little thing, the words get in the way.
Oh, that's the name of a song that's the name of a song by Gloria Estefan. That's the actual name of the song. Words get in the way.
Oh, yeah. And now that you said Gloria Estefan, I'm like, totally, I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, okay, so now I can go off on a tangent having to do with my inner being providing song lyrics, right?
This portion of the program where Wendy goes off on the tangent of her inner being is brought to you by...
Brought to you by my inner being.
By my inner being, right.
So one of the things I talked about recently is how I've been on this Project Body personal retreat where I didn't set out to go on a retreat. The retreat kind of came to me, brought to you by my inner being. And so I was working on something the other day and some feeling came to my awareness and I was feeling into it and I went, what does this feel like? Like, what does this mean? I felt the feeling, but I was having a hard time labeling it or describing it, because in my natural way, it was more like, ugh. I'm like, well, where do I go with, And all of a sudden I heard the song and not just the lyrics. I heard the melody and I heard the words and it was Alone Again Naturally.
Oh yeah. Gordon Lightfoot. And
I don't know if you remember that song, but I Googled it and it's, I think Gilbert, is it O'Sullivan or Sullivan?
Oh, it's Gilbert. Is it Gilbert Sullivan? Okay. Maybe it is. I thought it was
Gilbert
Gordon Lightfoot,
Sullivan,
but you may be right. Okay.
So I thought Alone Again Naturally. And I mean, that song lyric just kept playing and playing and playing until I started asking questions about it, saying, well, okay, what does that have to do with what this feels like? And I got a sense of, I felt very alone. I was like, okay.
Okay.
Well, then I go and I look up the song. First I look up the lyrics and then I look it up on YouTube so I can listen to it. I know this song came out probably when I was, I don't know, I think junior high-ish age. Mm-hmm. I think I even did a gymnastic routine.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I looked at the lyrics and I went, oh my God, this is so sad.
It is.
There's like four or five stanzas and each one, it's kind of like, it starts out with basically he's been left at the altar.
Yeah.
And everyone in the wedding party now leaves and he's alone again naturally. Mm-hmm. Then I think, his father dies and he talks about how his mother is alone again naturally. And then his mother dies. And then something with his kid happens. But it's all about how he's alone again naturally. Well,
it's about loss too. It's like an endless series of losses in that song.
Oh, it's so remorse.
Yeah.
Just so much sadness, which I have to say did connect. The energy of that song really did connect appropriately to what I was working on. So that was incredibly helpful.
Okay.
But I just thought it very interesting how my inner being likes to use song lyrics and just music to help provide messages for me. because there was such a sense of loneliness and sadness, and what a sad life in this song.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what I was sensing. And so anyway, I did the transformational work and got to the other side, and now I don't feel alone again naturally.
You were describing the lyric, and I'm hearing all the lyrics in my head now as you were talking there, including the verse where he says, I remember my father died. He was 65 years old. And my mother, God rest her soul, couldn't understand why the only man she had ever loved had been taken, leaving her to doubt. Talk about God and his mercy. Well, if he really does exist, why did he desert me? Like, whoa.
Yeah,
I mean, it just went off on this real... Oh, my goodness.
Did you just look that up, or did you really remember that?
No, I used to sing it, so I know the lyrics.
Oh, okay.
I played guitar for years.
I had looked it up, and it's like, that's exactly the lyrics, word for word, verbatim.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was I think that God-forsaken piece was also a piece of what I was feeling.
Wow.
And the energy of that song really portrayed that feeling that I experienced. So I was quite overjoyed that my inner being provided that guidance and that message for me, because it gave me a starting point so that I could move through that to the other side where now I don't feel that way at all, and
that's good.
It's all good.
Yeah, because that's a really rotten place to be in. I remember that. I mean, you asked me if I was reading that. No, I actually had memorized those lyrics many years ago because I used to perform it as one of the many songs that I would perform. And I remember each time I performed that song, I didn't actually make a connection at the time that this was leading to this stuff. But at the end of the performance, I'd be drained. It was such an unhappy message. It was like I had to put it at the end of a set. Or I would ask, if I was performing with others, can we put this at the end of the set, because I'd be wiped out at the end of it. It had such a negative vibe to it that I needed to go take a break afterward.
Well, something I thought was another something that I recognized. So I'm watching him sing the song on YouTube, and he's a pianist, and so the camera is kind of viewing him from almost profile view, where you get to see him from the profile playing the piano, and you see him playing the keys, and it's like he was bouncing his left foot up and down, with the meter of the song,
right?
And he was bouncing his head kind of up and down, and sometimes he'd shake it a little bit back and forth. But like when the camera would move and you would see his full face expression, I felt a disconnect between the words he was singing and what his expression was, because his expression almost had a slight smile.
Yeah.
It wasn't a huge smile. It was just ever so slight. It was there. Not like he was grinning, but just like a little bit of a smile. And I'm thinking, why would you smile during this song? There is not one lyric that was uplifting or that would make anybody feel happy. Not one.
I can project a possible reason. I don't know if it's true.
Okay.
But I can project a possible reason. He has performed that song so many times. He wasn't really a famous performer. I mean, until you said Gilbert Sullivan, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what his name was. Because I think he was even a one-hit wonder. I'm not even sure he had any other famous songs. And because of that became his signature. So every time that he performed that, he would get huge amounts of applause, and that made him feel better about singing the song. So I think it probably had gotten to the point where he had almost left behind what the song was about, and he was just drinking in all the positive reinforcement he was getting from all the people applauding every time he performed it.
And that kind of makes sense, but that does fit with my idea that his expression and his body language was disconnected from the actual message of the song.
I'm sure he had completely blocked that part out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then you know how YouTube does a thing where it'll autoplay like whatever is next in the queue?
Right, yeah.
So the next one was a song that you may remember called Claire. And it was actually the title of, I think, an album. And it was about his daughter. And this one was very sweet and uplifting, and how basically she was his whole life, and how, and they had like a little old home movie clip of him like lifting her up in the air. They're out in the backyard. She's probably 3 years old, and he's got her in his arms, and she's laughing and he's laughing. it was really sweet, and they kind of played that clip over and over because, they probably only have so many home movies.
Right.
But I just thought it interesting. I went, well, here he really embraces his daughter in this song and loves her dearly. And it made me feel better because I thought, if the only thing he ever sang was Alone Again Naturally, what a depressed life.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Well, how interesting, too. I mean, as soon as you're describing that, no, I did not recognize that song. I don't remember that one at all. But how interesting that the popular song was the one about everything going wrong, and the song nobody knows about is the one about everything going right.
Well, if you look up that one, I think because you're a music person, you'll probably remember it. Because the moment I started hearing it, I went, oh, I remember that song.
Oh, familiar melody? Okay, well, that could be, yeah.
But it wasn't but Alone Again Naturally, oh, yeah, that one, like you, I remembered a lot of the words as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one that was one of those songs that got really, really overplayed on the radio. You could, when that song was popular, you could hardly turn on the radio without it coming on every 5 minutes. Because that's how thoroughly it was selling. It was selling like hotcakes.
Well,
that's why I say it's an indication. I continue to be really impressed by, well, impressed is the wrong word. It has made an impression on me just how strongly people buy into negative. And they seek it out. They lap it up. And I think it's because they identify with it on some level. I think that particular song people identified with on some level. Maybe some of it was out of their own personal experience. But to me, that's like the reinforcement about why I want to keep doing the podcast, because I want to counterbalance all that stuff. Seriously.
And for me, I believe you. I have kind of an odd relationship with music because when it comes to specific songs, rarely do I really hear the words unless I'm really trying to pay attention, or if somebody says, listen to this lyric, it's really fabulous. That always puts me on the spot because I have a hard time really tuning into lyrics. I do pick up on the vibration of the music. I pick up on the melody, and I like a song based on the melody and how it makes me feel. But rarely does it have anything to do with the words. And so, now as an adult, there will be times, just like, this last week when I looked up Alone Again Naturally, where I'll look up the actual song lyrics of some song that I adored when I was in high school, and I'll go, holy cow, that's what's being said? And I'm in shock because, even in high school, I would probably sing along to the chorus, but then go mutter through all the stanzas of the rest of the lyrics because I never really heard them.
Right.
I just knew I liked the song. What, that people don't hear the lyrics?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's very common.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I hung around with a lot of people who are musicians.
Oh, okay.
They all knew the lyrics. They were either musicians or songwriters,
Well, I expect that most people actually do know lyrics of their favorite songs. I just have found it really interesting how often people don't know lyrics. I mean, because I would have thought that it was close to, if it was a song they know and like, I thought they would know almost all the lyrics. And that's almost never the case. Maybe they know a few words out of the chorus. They might know something of the first verse, but that's about it. They actually know a lot less of the lyrics than I would have expected.
Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah. Of course, it depends on the song too,
True.
How much was the song overplayed? Was it played so much that it was drummed into your head what the lyric was?
Well, the pop song now, I think it's called Happy.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a song that when it comes on, I love the melody. I love the way it makes me feel. I always tend to feel really happy when it comes on. I think only one time did I really stop and pay attention to all the lyrics in between the chorus when they talk about happy, happy, happy. I don't remember them now, but I remember going, oh, those are nice lyrics.
Yeah, they are. They're good. Actually, Pharrell Williams, who wrote the song, is particularly proud of one of the lyrics. He says, I'm happy, I feel like a room without a roof. He loved that lyric. He thought that was great. And I agree. I think it's a good lyric, but I mean, he really loved that lyric. So, you never know what, and the funny thing about that song is it was released with, a movie. It was, the sequel to Despicable Me, which is like a kid's cartoonish kind of movie. And
Oh, really?
yeah, and it was released with that because it had been previously released, I think, as a single or as part of an album or something, and had gone nowhere. And then it came out with a movie, and then like a year or two later, they just tried releasing it one more time just to see what would happen, and it took off like crazy because all the people who had seen the movie.
Oh, okay. So it's part of an animated movie now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's when it really became well known, and the fact that it was part of the movie was what primed it for when they did the second release. Because at that point, enough people were ready for it that when it got released, it was like, buy it up, quick.
That's interesting. There's a little bit of trivia that I was unaware of.
Yeah, Pharrell was actually stunned, according to interviews I've seen with him, that it took off as much as it did. I mean, it was literally, that song was so popular that I think if you looked at all of the so-called Western countries of the world, it was number one in all of those countries for like weeks at a time. It was dominating the charts in all of the major countries, all the major Western countries around the world. I mean, just absolutely dominating, and stayed there for like weeks or months at a time. It was crazy.
Huh, that's cool.
In fact, you can look it up on YouTube. He did a video, or he commissioned a video. I don't remember exactly how it was done, but they did a video where they went out and arranged to have people dancing to the music, and then they just did clip after clip after clip of people dancing to the music, and they included some famous people in it, like Magic Johnson was in it, and a few other people that aren't coming to my mind. And that thing went viral, and then that turned into a thing where other people submitted themselves dancing to the video, and that went viral. I mean, it was just like this ongoing phenomenon that to this day he can't even explain.
Okay, so now I'm going to go off on a new rabbit trail because you're talking about famous people.
Okay, sure.
Which made me think of an interview I watched the other day. It was a Super Soul Sunday, which is Oprah's show.
Oprah Winfrey, yeah.
Yes, and she was interviewing Tracy Morgan.
Okay.
And, Tracy Morgan's the comic who's been on Saturday Night Live and been in many other movies. And I want to say it was in 2014.
I don't know.
He and his whole tour of like all the comics that were part of his thing, they were in a very tragic car accident where a Walmart semi-truck hit their van and turned over. One of the comics died.
Oh, man.
Tracy was sent to a hospital and was in a what do they call it? Coma induced? Something where, like he was in a coma for 8 days.
So induced coma. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And, did not know what was going to happen to him, if and when he woke up. And I remembered, because remember, I don't listen to the news, neither do you. I had kind of heard that there was something where Tracy Morgan was in some really serious accident. And so I was curious to see what happened in the interview. But here's my point. So for those who don't know, it's like I would say quite miraculously, does not have any negative repercussions. Well, or like one really slight one, but not something that's really pronounced. I mean, his brain was open due to the injury, and it's like you can't even see the scars on his head. Maybe you can, like if he shaved his head bald, but even though he wears his hair really short, it's like you couldn't see anything. He kind of had to relearn all sorts of things about daily life, but boy, he's as funny as ever, when he does his comedy stuff. But here's what I noticed that was really fascinating to me, because I'm always looking for congruence when people talk. And I noticed that when they would do clips of him doing his comedy routine or being on Saturday Night Live, he was like a typical comic. He would have the appropriate facial expression for whatever he was saying. But he is so in love with life now. He went to the other side, and that's what he talks about. He went to the other side. He had a conversation with I don't know if it was Jesus or God, who said, not time for you to come back, not time for you to come here, we're sending you back. So he had a real spiritual experience that was very impacting to how he lives his life today.
What's often called a near-death experience, which I always thought was rather ironic because it's actually a near-life experience, but whatever.
And so, you know, he was talking about how he has such incredible love for humanity like he never did before.
Wow.
I mean, he's like, even if I haven't met you, I love you.
Good for him.
I love everybody, you know, and it was just, he was speaking these very beautiful words. But while I was watching him, his face looked like it was in pain.
Ooh.
And this was not like left over from the, you know, an accident.
Yeah.
But I noticed whenever he talked about these really deep, spiritual, moving ideas, he always looked like he was in pain.
Wow.
And then the rest of the time when he was just talking about other stuff with Oprah, he had a more relaxed expression. And so I just thought that seems so, I guess to me it felt incongruent.
Yeah, I can see why.
And I don't know if that's because while he's saying these words, he's actually anchored into the pre-near-death experience of when he was living life in a way that didn't have this. But I don't know. I'm just kind of curious why there would be such angst on his face when he would say, even if I don't know you, I love you. I'm like, how come that doesn't look believable on his face? How come his face is not saying I love you? His words were,
right. His
tonality totally was, but his face wasn't. And those are things that I pay attention to because
but you don't have any clear sense of it though. I mean, you don't have some idea about why he's doing that.
No, I mean, the only thing I can really grasp at is that he's connected to negative feelings that he's probably unaware of while he's speaking these words.
Yeah.
Kind of like, I may have shared this before, how Abraham oftentimes will talk about the two words gratitude versus appreciation.
Yes, right.
And I wonder if it has to do with that. And so just for those who have never heard that differentiation, I'll share it, that when somebody is in appreciation, that is generally resonant of pure positive energy, a very high vibration. But when somebody speaks with gratitude, gratitude usually has a vibration that is infused with not only the appreciation for where they are now, but they're also looking back to the uncomfortable where they were before. And so gratitude is usually a mixed message or a mixed vibration of both positive and negative feelings.
Yeah, I expressed I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, and that's what I was thinking maybe when I was watching Tracy Morgan talk, that he was thinking about maybe who he was before when he couldn't say I love you to everybody.
Yeah, I would be surprised.
You know. Because,
I mean, I was really kind of shocked a few weeks back, actually now a couple months back, and I don't even remember what the context was, but in one of the books that we were looking at with, I don't know which co-host it was, maybe with you, where the book was basically saying that bliss is equal to appreciation. That appreciation is bliss, and I had never thought of it as being on that level. I recognized what Abraham said, that there was a difference between the gratitude and appreciation vibrations, because there usually is some sort of a negative vibration that's kind of mixed in there a little bit. But when they said that appreciation is bliss, that gave me an entirely new perspective. And so when you're describing Tracy Morgan and how he's talking about this really blissful kind of experience and not showing it on his face, showing something quite different, it reinforces for me what true appreciation really is. And he wasn't feeling appreciation. He was feeling perhaps gratitude, but he wasn't feeling appreciation if he had that big pain going on.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it was pure positive energy.
Yeah.
The words were and the tone of voice was, but the body language wasn't.
Yeah.
And that's something I learned many years ago with Tony Robbins, and there's many other schools of thought that teach this as well. but communication is made up in three parts: the words you say, the tone and tonality in which you say it, and what your body's doing it while you're saying it.
See, I learned that from the Arc Linkletter School of kids say the darndest things, because that was one of the darndest kids said in one of the interviews from that segment that he did many, many years ago. It was something to the effect of a kid saying to him, or he was saying to the kid that he was happy about something. The kid said, well, why don't you let your face know?
So apropos. That's exactly what I'm saying about Tracy Morgan. Why aren't you letting your face know this happy, wonderful thought?
And I'll never forget Art Linkletter looking in the camera, the way he always looked whenever a kid said something that was just really not expected, with that look on his face that said, what do you say to that?
Exactly. Well, and so understanding how our communication is comprised of these three, different aspects. Ever since learning that, I pay attention to people, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, to what they're communicating. Are they really communicating what they really are saying or not? Mm-hmm. And now as a coach, if I'm coaching somebody by phone, I don't have the physical body language to read. So then I'm looking for, do their words match their tone of voice?
Yeah.
And if they don't, that's when I start poking around and asking questions.
Yeah, that's
I'm
a clue.
There's something here that's not completely aligned, So anyway, I just thought that was
It occurs to me too. That's something that a lot of practitioners of the law of attraction do. We've talked about this in a different context, but how often do we as practitioners try to put a positive spin on the fact that we don't feel good about something? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. No, I do know what you mean, because that's actually one of the things that I have to be a detector when I'm talking with my clients and they're telling me this rosy, happy story. And I'm sensing either sometimes they use particular words, or sometimes it's the tone of voice that I'm like, and sometimes I got to tell you, if I can't get it from that, thank goodness I read energy, because I tap into the energy and go, the energy is not aligned to what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Your story sounds all happy, peppy, life is good. But why are you calling me then?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there must be some reason.
And because I listen to so much Abraham stuff and listen to people sitting in the hot seat, oftentimes they want to start their, whatever it is they want to say to Abraham, they'll start with all these happy words, or like, oh, I just want to appreciate, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, right.
And Abraham will go, I don't remember how they say it, but basically Abraham is listening or sensing their energy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, we hear what you're saying, but yet there's an underlying message of the contrary, and then the workshop person is like, oh, yeah, you're right. And they go into buckets of tears. Okay, I exaggerated that point for fun.
Not so much sometimes, though. Sometimes, actually, what usually happens, I've seen, is that the person will start with, like you say, they'll play the really high vibration thing because that's what they feel like they have to do, and then they'll try to stay there while Abraham tries to delve into what's really going on, and they'll insist, well, there's nothing really wrong. Kind of like what you experience with your clients, and you're saying to them, well, okay, so why did you call me? Why are you sitting here in the hot seat?
Well, and when you're dealing with Abraham, you can't get away with anything.
No, you really can't.
Because, they're picking up on levels that, it's kind of like, how only a dog could hear certain sounds?
Yes.
That's how it is with Abraham. They're sensing the real thing.
Well, it's actually kind of unfair. It's unfair being in the hot seat. There's one of you in the hot seat. From what they say, Abraham is like a collection of non-physical beings. So basically, it's one against many. You don't have a prayer. And not only that, they can tap into your energy, and if you can't tap into theirs, man, you're screwed. Forget it.
Yeah, that is pretty funny. Now, I had a call set up for today with somebody that I'm meeting through LinkedIn, and we got pushed off to next week. But the reason I really wanted to talk to her is she is an expert in reading micro expressions.
Micro expressions. So like little tiny tweaks of the mouth and stuff.
Yes, or the eyes, or the nose, or the cheeks, or the eyebrows. And there's a study of work done by Ekman is the last name. I think Paul Ekman.
Okay.
And there was a television show on the air for about 3 years. It was on broadcast TV called "Lie to Me," as in somebody's lying.
Okay.
And it was kind of an investigative show where FBI or police, they couldn't make heads or tails of, who was the person who did the crime. And this company was brought in as experts, and they would interview the various people, and they would say to the police, let him go, he's not guilty. And they're like, yeah, but he's got circumstantial evidence, and we've got, and he's got he doesn't have an alibi, and he has motive, and we have all these pieces of evidence. And he's like, yeah, but he didn't do it. And so they would basically catch the bad guy through the art of micro expression. And it was interesting because it was actually, that show was based on the work of Paul Ekman, who discovered this. And what was discovered is that our body, now this I know, our body cannot lie. We can lie, but our body will always give us away. But only those that can read the body will know how to differentiate what that means.
And I was going to say, as any good poker player knows. Because
exactly.
That's what poker players do. They read body language.
Exactly.
It's also why I won't play poker in a casino, because I like playing behind a TV screen where they can't see me.
Can't see your face. Where
they can't see my face or what I'm
doing. Yeah. And so anyway, when I had done a search for law of attraction coaches, a couple weeks ago, this gal is somebody who came up and she made a connection with me. And I read her bio and I'm like, oh my God, she is like certified by somebody who was certified by Paul Ekman on micro expressions. And she uses this, I think in corporate to help people build rapport. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't even know what I want to say to her except tell me more. This is so cool.
Teach me.
Yeah. And I did realize after watching the 3 seasons that this show was on the air, that I have a natural inclination in reading micro expressions, but I'm not an expert at it. But intuitively, I pick up on subtleties that my, like the visual part of me, I can't tell you what it is I'm picking up. Like I can't say, oh, I noticed that the crease of their eye did this, or this, or that there was a, I couldn't tell you the what, but I could sense it energetically. And so it was interesting because one of the people they hire on the television show, she was working in TSA in the airport. And when, I can't remember what the main guy's name was, but like he had gone through the airport and he was just watching her as she was pulling people out of line, and he had this sense like, wow, I think she's either natural at this or she knows something about micro expression. And so he hired her and took her away from the TSA and put her on his team. And what was interesting about her character is that it was concluded that she had a natural intuitive sense, but now to get to refine her talents, she needed to really learn the specific muscles on the face that did specific things for her to know what was behind the intuitive impulse that she had.
Well, it makes sense to me that people could do that. I kind of suspect we all can to some extent.
I think so too.
I mean, I think that's what body language is all about, right? Trying to learn what does the body language tell us? And it's like the comment made by this one character on a sitcom. What do I know about body language? I only know that it's inhibiting because we're trying to hide the body language, right? Well, I think we all read it to some extent, but it's cool that somebody has taken it to the I don't know, to the extreme. I'm not sure what the word is, where you can...
To a more scientific level.
Yeah, okay, so that's better. A more scientific level where you can actually slice and dice it and know, A and B, now that leads to C for sure. Wow.
Yeah. And I don't know why this is connecting for me, but I was listening to one of your replays, where you had Julie Ryan on, who's an intuitive healer.
Oh, yeah, that was great. That was fun.
And it's like she knows things that other people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe her gift came to her very naturally and intuitively.
Well, she said actually she had to learn it, but you're right, it came easily to her.
Right. But she learned, and that's what I was going to say, she learned some specific skills, some specific knowledge that helped her have awareness that when she feels XYZ feeling or a certain sensation internally, that it's an indication of something specific, that's going on in somebody's body.
And she reinforced that everybody could learn this too. I mean, she said literally anybody could learn to do this. She even gave the name of the institute where she got her training from. But I think you're right. She did have that kind of not automatic, but that built-in sensitivity to it that was already there, and all she had to do was kind of develop it a little bit. Right.
And most likely, and I don't, she may have said it and I don't recall, but most likely she probably sensed that she had this kind of unique ability. And that's probably what drew her to studying it more intently so that she could really be good at it. I mean, just like I have always, 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 always been fascinated by human behavior and why people do what they do. And I always wanted to understand the psychological component.
Sure.
And that's what drew me to all the different studies that I've been trained in. And I think that's why I'm good at it, is because that had always been a natural curiosity for me.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, if you're going to pursue something like that, and you even told us one time how much money you'd spent on self-development, it kind of floored me. But when you do that much study, you've got to be driven to do it. I mean, it's not like you're going to do it just on a whim. You're going to do it because it's really important to you on some level. And that means you've got something going on inside that says, yeah, I like that. I really want more of that.
If I never had a client again, if I never got paid again for what I know, I would continue to pursue this study for the rest of my life.
Right.
And I plan to. I am always expanding and developing a greater sense of awareness about the connection between how we think and what comes out of it in terms of behavior.
That's very cool. By the way, before we run out of time, because I can see we're kind of nearing the end here, I want to get a couple of the two main messages out that we try to do every show. First one being, if you're not yet a subscriber, please take the time to do so. The instructions are on the homepage of our website at loatoday.net. It's real simple. It takes just a moment to do. About the only change we've made recently is we're now just exclusively recommending Google Podcast software for Android users, just because Wendy, we found out, Louis actually found this out for us, some of the apps are not finding LOA Today well, but Google Podcast always finds it. So for Android users, we're now recommending Google Podcast. And on the iPhone, of course, it's real simple because you just use the built-in podcast app that's there. You do what?
I was going to say on an iPhone, you would use iTunes.
Well, yeah, iTunes. You can go directly to iTunes, or you can go through Podcasts, which searches iTunes. It works either way. So you're good. No problem. And then for those who are the ongoing subscribers who have been helping us with our campaign, hey guys, it's working. The numbers are increasing. We're down double listeners compared to where we were 3 months ago. Please keep it up. Please keep posting about listening to loatoday.net, because we want more and more and more people to be aware that they can get their daily dose of happy. We want to kind of reverse that overall global trend of all the negativity out there by replacing it with some positive entertainment that people like. So please keep sharing as well. Just want to make sure I got that in there. And let's get yours in there too, Wendy, because you're a pretty darn good coach. How does somebody reach out to you too?
They can connect with me by going to wendydillard.com.
wendydillard.com. Okay. So we got about 30 seconds left before the music hits. What's the last thought? I'm not even sure what to call the podcast. My working title is You Say Tomato, I Say ToMAHto, because that's kind of like we're two different viewpoints about how we're looking at this stuff. So what's the final word on this?
I have no idea. I'm going to leave that to you.
You're going to leave it to me? Oh, okay. Well, then I'm going to take the simple way out, because when I don't know how to summarize it, usually I have to go back and play the whole thing and find out exactly what I want to call it. But I'm going to summarize it by saying, hey, we're so glad that you joined us today, and we hope that you'll join us every time, because we love you guys so much. We have the best listeners in the world, and we hope you just keep coming back and coming back and coming back. And we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye for now.